Tony's memo accurately. Historically, those wells are not adequate to provide your $700,000 to $800,000 gallons per day. And secondly, the shape, we don't know what kind of shape they're in right now, or what valves or linings or anything else is. Thirdly, we just had a speaker at that podium complaining about our having $500,000 in our budget for stormwater cleaning and gateway greens, and this would add to that amount, not reduce it. Now, I understand the argument about golf courses, and I'm somewhat sympathetic, but I think that we've got to understand that everybody's gonna have to have some skin in this game if you expect us to use public funds to help you out of what we don't even know is a problem.
Well, I don't disagree at all. The price I got from my pump guy, and I can't touch them because they're not mine, it's only like $2,500, $3,000 to pull it and take a look on one of them. So
Yeah.
it's not like it's a massive amount of money to do a little, look-see at it. And then down the road, there's never, to my knowledge,
You'll pay for it?
why, they're not my wells.
They're not, they're not.
It's
It's our responsibility.
Not true.
But I mean, to my knowledge, I've never seen or found or discovered any agreement that the wells had in place with any prior owner, whether it was member-owned, WCI owned, or owned by us. So I don't think there's ever been a utilities deal, but I mean, during crunch time, I'd be happy to buy water from you guys. Because when we need it, there's nowhere else to go. There's no other source of water except those wells.
So,
And I'm not saying we need all 5 of them either, and it's not accurate. Those wells can supply us with all the water we need. It can supply us more than 700,000 or 800,000 gallons.
so I think we can probably go back and forth discussing, where impact is and value of, one piece of a community versus another. I mean, I think the golf course adds value to the total community, but I think because it's an asset, we need to go through an asset evaluation. I think we have had history where we have assets that aren't maintained, and we're not doing due diligence where we should. So again, if we want to continue to be in the board that we want to be, we have to basically change the things we've done in the past to do them correctly. Now, so what I'd love to see, step one, is just do an asset evaluation, figure out how much it would cost to at least, kick the tires and test it. Whether the board approves for us to spend that money, or we work with a partnership, or we ask the country club to fit the bill on that first piece, whatever. I think the first step is, let's figure out what we need to do first. And then second, who's gonna fund it? And once we have an evaluation, we understand what working condition is, then we can go into the next step, which is, okay, what is long-term use, ownership, value, revenue, all those additional things. So that, what my recommendation would be is have Chris at least figure out what we gotta do to get started, how much that costs, then bring that back to the board, say this is what it would cost, we're either gonna fund it, we're gonna co-fund it, or we're gonna ask the country club to fund it as they would be the sole proprietor of output, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah,
But to ignore it, I think is not something we should be doing.
We've rehabbed a couple of our wells, our groundwater wells, in the last 3 years, so we're very familiar with what's going on with them, and I can get a condition assessment, a quote for that before the next board meeting.
Yeah, and one other thing I would ask too, Chris, is, I know we've talked about it being a sole value to the country club, and how that rolls down here, we can discuss. Can you just look and maybe, is there any other, how does having 1 or 5 wells operable, even if it is feeding the country club, or is there another value that it brings? Can
There's a
it potentially?
prohibition. There's a prohibition.
It-
The permit says it has to be for the country club.
But is there a potential revenue stream a reasonable revenue stream that we can put in place? I just don't know what the options are. Right now, I think there's no benefit to the majority of the country club, or to the community, so that's where I think there might be some resistance. And yeah, we can argue
Yeah,
that.
you had some chemical issues that the reason that they wanted to go to the country club only and not go to individual wells, if you look, or individual yards. If you noticed in the stuff that Tony had, that basically the lake is going to blend it, is
Yeah.
the whole idea.
Okay.
Okay.
So-
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I make public comment, Madam Chairperson?
30 seconds, Jim, 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. James Brand, you know where I am and where I live. So I think that the country club is definitely an asset to the whole community. I don't play golf. I've never been to the golf club. I've been in the dining room. But let's find a way to make those wells work, and then let's charge for them. They're our asset. They're on standby. The golf club needs them on standby. That should be a revenue stream. Thank
So,
you.
so we're just.
We'll give you
yeah.
that consideration, Jim, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, I'm gonna move back to the top. Oh, Tony, did you have anything else?
Just briefly, you know, to my knowledge, the district has not yet been served with this lawsuit, and I don't want any further comment on it, just report this to the board. There is a woman that lives on the east coast of Florida that as of last Friday has filed 89 lawsuits.
89
89 in federal court, Southern District, against, started off with like Chicos and private entities, and then transitioned, this is just since April 25th of this year, to suing community development districts, saying that the districts are required by state law to have websites. They're required to maintain certain records on website, but that asserting in these lawsuits that the district's websites are not ADA compliant. And so, Chris, to my knowledge, we haven't been served yet, but I saw that we were on the list of the most recently filed lawsuits, because I check that like once a week. And I think hopefully you sent it on to the insurance carrier, because the insurance carrier for some districts are mounting aggressive defenses to motions to dismiss. Additionally, there's a firm out there that I've received information about this couple firms that help you make your site ADA compliant and then maintain compliance, and I give that information to Chris. It's relatively inexpensive amount. So I'm sure Chris has contacted them to try to address that, but
Does the lady own one of them?
no, she lives in Boynton Beach. Same attorney, same lady, 89 lawsuits as of June 25th. But we'll keep you advised as to the status of that lawsuit.
And if you want to circle back with me, I've got some knowledge on this
This
area.
very thing.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
How do you make a website ADA compliant?
There's a.
PDFAs, and apparently there's programs and software
Yeah.
that when you access a document, if you're visually impaired,
And there's different levels.
Yes.
And there's different requirements for levels depending on whatever.
well, the question is whether or not there are even requirements, because I understand it, because there were some guidelines that really haven't been formally adopted.
Right, and that's
They're
exactly.
recommended by the Department of Justice, so that's, again, that's part of some of the litigation that's going on right now.
Your name Sanders?
No.
Has anybody ruled on her standing?
There are two motions to dismiss that were filed by a law firm out of Orlando for two CDDs over on the East Coast. And one of the issues they raised is whether or not she does have requisite standing to file that claim, among other things. I'll monitor those cases like once a week. I can just check the court filings to see what happens.
She was somebody that lived in the community that made.
I know that I have further comment than that, but I understand, but.
She'll move over here.
Thank you, Tony.
Yeah,
Anything
I
else?
know, again, you're in good company. Colonial got sued also. Stony Brook, further south got sued. Fiddler's Creek 1 and 2 got sued. Lady CDD got
I
sued.
think they're following you then.
No, they're following Rafael Hard Hunt.
Anything else, Tony?
Yeah, I've got a couple for you.
Okay. Mr. Tinkle has a question.
Where we at on the final form draft of the engineering agreement with Tetra Tech?
Chris and I haven't yet had an opportunity to get together on that, so we.
Got all the comments
Yeah,
from
all
board
the
members and
comments, just
everything?
have a few more.
Okay.
And hopefully we'll have it for the next board meeting, because we'll be together next week.
Sounds good.
I gotta send you mine too, Chris.
Okay.
By the way, I just sent Mr. Iannucci my memo on the roads, so we should have those.
But that was my other one, I was on the railroad, on the roadway tracks. Where are we on the letter to the commercial businesses to see if anybody is willing to take the bull by the horns and carry this?
I haven't made any progress on it, but I will in the next 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, probably
In
the
terms
ones
of
that
the
would
three.
be the guests to talk to are the people that are picking up the tab for maintaining them. Right now, according to L, we have one. I don't know how we ever did what we're doing down in West Links. That one's so far out in left field, I don't get that at all. But apparently, we're doing the medians, but not the right of way, and yet we own them. But there is somebody down there that's doing it. That might be a person that would be willing to get that POA resolved. And then, I don't know anybody down in that Worthington deal, but somebody obviously, according to that gentleman, is at least trying to mow it. I don't know if it's the brewery owner or somebody else. There might be another point of contact. And then for Fairway Lakes Office Park, that's Cicerelli. He owns Denny Grimes' lot, and he apparently is the lead guy and the oldest person in that community. So those would be 3 points of contact that maybe, they may come back and just tell us the pound sand, that they don't want a part of it because they know it's gonna cost them money.
And there's a management company there as well,
Yes, there is.
so.
They're the ones doing it at West Links, even right after the hurricane, they had contractors they hired that were cleaning up the right of way in their parking lot.
Well, most of the tree damage, unfortunately, or fortunately, as the case may be, in West Links was on their side of the sidewalk, not our side.
District manager, you're up.
Okay. I have a map in there, the Lee County DOT is gonna be doing some improvements down on Commerce Lakes Drive and Gateway Boulevard, right across from the Saucy Meatball. And it's basically just, they're trying to do something, they know they need to signalize or that, it's under study right now, but what they're planning on doing is that one lane on the far side is just removing it, so they're only gonna have one lane that goes to the right and straight, and they'll block off the center straight across lane, and then add some striping to the right turn lanes.
And
They're
we
basically
removed all
just
the
trying to keep.
trees. Of all the trees that we committed to removing, have they been removed?
Yeah, they're done. So, and they're planning on doing that the night of July 15th. So,
Did we have any feedback on what the cause of the death was, to where the person went from the southbound lane into the northbound lane?
No.
There's nothing coming at us in the way, that's what I thought you were gonna have on the lawsuit, that a tree interfered with the site or something like that.
no, got the
We haven't heard anything.
Police report, the initial one really was for filing under insurance, but we haven't gone any further with it at this point.
We don't know what happened.
Do you have a comment?
Yeah, I had heard that she was driving on the wrong side of the road.
No.
I think we should probably keep speculation on out there.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
I just wanna make sure we have it sued yet.
Well, the way it works in Florida, person has to file a notice of claim first, we have 6 months to settle or deny. No response constitutes a denial, then they can proceed.
Okay, and we also got in today the Alta survey for the FPL easement.
All right.
So we've been forward, working with Tony on that, bringing it back to the board to see if you'd like to accept conveyance. And we also put out an email blast to the HOAs, and asked them if they'd like our staff to come talk to them about the budget at their next HOA meeting. So we're trying to get out there in the community and talk budget.
And I know that, I got a request from RCAM in Stony Brook, and I provided our current president, your contact information for that very thing.
And that's all I have for today.
Finance manager. Oh, I'm sorry, yes, you may.
Did we get
Sorry,
any-
Mike.
Sorry, did we get any money back, or reimbursement from FEMA yet?
No.
No, okay, thank you.
May I ask one?
Certainly.
Any chance you can get the potholes out in front of the building filled?
It's not a budget.
We actually already got the quote, and the contractor will be doing that in the next 10 days.
Those are bad.
Yeah.
They all
And,
have to weed through.
My car was probably versus.
So it'll be fixed before the next board meeting, and probably sooner.
Okay, now finance manager.
Okay, just a couple of quick things we're working on. Run into a couple of issues with overtime, our overtime policy that we kind of recently wrote, and the on-call employees, because they're working overtime, is on-call, but they may have taken a day off or something like that, so paying the actual overtime rate for those hours, our policy states not to, because it's based on 40 hours worked. Earlier this week, on just a few things, met with our HR attorney, and talked to him, and he basically said, you know, we can write our policy as we see, basically to pay them overtime rates for those that are working, they're on call, so we kind of separate underneath our overtime.
It's outside of
policy.
standard hours.
Correct. So, we're gonna work on that. Also, which, talk about it here in a little bit, it's been going on forever, back and forth with the whole phone system, which is just getting worse by the day. And the internet, so I'll go into more detail of that later. Then been working with, this is kind of what's come up too with a lot of our pay policy things, doing a online time attendance, so no more timesheets. It'll all be done online. It'll go all to the managers, where the manager said they can approve the vacation, all that, it feeds right in. It's basically just approving it, and all that labor is gone.
Yep.
Which is a lot of time on me. So it's really cool, it's user friendly, but entering all of these policies and everything in it
Is that through Paycheck as well? Is that an add-on?
yeah, they're just an add-on module, so when they log in, they can do their stuff right there.
Are you working with the Paycheck rep to look at all their capability, and this is where you're kind of finding these opportunities?
Yeah, they all call.
I'm sure they do, trust me.
I mean, there's been like 10, I didn't even know they offered all these things.
I just want to make sure you're at.
Yeah, so it's all been directly through that. It's just easier to keep it with them than other third-party things, and it's much more affordable too, so.
Great.
Okay. Any questions for Mike? Thank you. Utility manager.
Good afternoon, Kenny Hall, Utility Manager. I wanted to start off with the AMI. And also I want to say that we went to Lee County this following last week. And I got a chance to talk to their building manager and their finance director, and I started asking them, because they had switched over to a Moeller, same type of system that we had with an AMI, they have antennas. And kind of asked them what kind of problems they had, and their garden variety problems were the same as as ours. Lids, MIUs failing, all the garden variety stuff that we've come across, they seem to be having the exact same problems with their system. It kind of evolved, I guess, where they're having the MIUs going bad, and they're finding them in the bottom of boxes, which is what one of our big problems was, because they're not being attached to the lid. We had the cast iron, they didn't plasma cut them, for whatever reason, they left the MIUs in the bottom of the box, and Lee County was saying that that was one of their biggest issues. And that is they're kind of, with their system, it kind of mirrors ours, except that we have 50 leak detections, they have 35,000 of them. So their scale is much bigger than ours, but it's pretty much come down to the same exact type of problems. And that was one of the things that I took away from the meeting that we had. And I wanted this June was the 6th month for the MIUs. This year we're at 432 already. Last year we had 511 for the year. At June we're sitting at 432. And like I've said before, if we take this away, all the normal problems through the year, from last year compared to this year, are dropping. It's starting to. It's just this cycle of MIUs that we're having. If we stay on this pace, we're going to be 1,000 for the year.
What's the? You said you compare that to the county.
Oh no, I'm comparing it. Oh, well, yes.
And is the county using what kind of tops that we talk about?
Yes, they have composite lids, which we have for our bigger size meters, and they have the exact same problem. They cannot hang them inside the box, is what they clearly stated.
So, if we look at one of these entities that are using optimal solutions, you know, whether they're, I can't remember what you said before, as far as the composite tops versus.
Any of the new ones that we have a problem with the stainless, or with our standard DSP box, If we have a problem with that box, we take it out and put it in a standard county municipal box, which is plastic. And we've done that, I think we're on our, I believe our 10th box.
And can we piggyback off, let's say, the county's purchasing ability, so we can get maybe these at a more discounted rate, or can we partner with them? I mean, I'm just trying to think, how do we offset costs?
We have that ability, yes.
It's more labor than it is material.
Yes.
Well,
That's your
Yes.
problem.
Yeah.
Yes. And where we've done it, we've taken the MIUs off the lids and put them on the side of the boxes, and we've had them in the ground for, we're coming up on 6 months with no issues. I mean, it does work.
Inside the box or outside?
Inside the box.
Inside
We
the
actually
box.
strap it onto the side of the box, so that way if the lid comes out, it doesn't matter, which is a big problem, because once that lid gets separated in the wires, it just rips
Yeah,
the
but where's
wires.
the dome? So you're not using the cast iron lids?
No, they're plastic.
Okay, so the plastic allows the signal to go
Yeah,
out.
Xander clearly stated that we could not put them in our boxes the way it was with
That's
this one.
right.
So we're attaching them inside instead of.
Right,
on-
right, just taking them
so-
out of, taking them off the lid altogether.
So I guess if we look at it, there's, to Ed's point, it's a labor issue.
It's labor.
So if we look at this as a long-term replacement, right,
What's the per cost?
we're gonna have to look at.
We're looking at about $50 per box.
So 3,300 times 50.
In all the new communities.
So if I
you
can
come-
finish for 1 second, please. If we look at this as a long-term project, and we look at the cost to replace, we should be trying to identify optimal times when staff has available, time, whether it's certain times a year or, X amount during the week, where it doesn't become a high cost, because we're taking away something else. So I think, you're gonna have to sit down and look over the next, let's say, 3 years, if it's a total replacement project, what is the most optimal times that's most cost effective, so we don't get in a position where we're having this, this huge cost burden because we're having to basically replace, so we have to figure out how we can become really efficient at either replacing when they're broke or replacing when it's optimal for us to do it.
And how many have you said that you replaced?
We're all coming up, we buy them in batches of 5, so we're on our second batch. I want to say 10, 9 to 10.
How many are repeats? In other words,
We've replaced
mine,
them.
I think we've done mine 2 or 3 times. How many of these are repeats?
None
So
that,
they're new.
yes.
That's not good.
Well, it's the 2015 series. It's that series when they were put in during that 2015 run. Those MIUs, for whatever reason, whether storage, left in the bottom of the box, there's just many reasons. It's confined to that period. Anything that we've installed, even during that time period, we've not had to replace yet. It is just those dead MIUs in that 2015 time stretch.
The new boxes are really nice. I still have the old one, but the people that live next door to me, they had to have theirs replaced because it was crushed. And it's just so much nicer. It looks better, it's easier to mow over.
Much cheaper. Yeah, and practical for what we do. Especially with those MIUs, if we can go a year and we have those boxes in the ground and look at it, I think that would be a simple solution to it, as opposed to, well, when we do the new boxes, especially on the bigger meters, we don't put that MIU on the lid. We do not do that. We'll put it on the side, anything we can do to keep it away from that lid, because it also has ancillary problems where they come out to check it and they lift it up and they pull it open and there's the wire connection rips the wire. They put it back in, they close the lid, crushes the wire. I mean, there's all kinds of scenarios
No, it
you
makes
come
sense
across
to-
with that,
yeah.
to just remove it from that altogether.
Those lids aren't the easiest things to manipulate. They're heavy.
And there's $140 worth of MIUs hanging off of them. And you slam them, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff.
I mean, I've even seen the mowers, because the mowers are mowing over them, they,
Flip it.
and it's.
They say Lee County is having the same, they mirrored, our problems mirrored their problems. They were saying the same thing with the lids and the mowers and the wires being split. And they're not, when they're doing the install, they're not hooking that MIU up onto the lid either, just laying it in the bottom. And it's a lithium battery sitting flat,
On the ground.
it destroys. So, I mean, anything we can do to get it off that lid is a great benefit. And I'd say, the Griffin Drive lift station, this is the 7-Eleven station right up here. We had this on the CIP. This lift station is going to be a problem. It has 3 different issues with it. For one, on the operations side, the master manhole is in between the intersection. That is where the master manhole is, and that is not good.
That's really good.
Because we have to pump from there, we have to plug that line and pump, and then go into the force main, which is across the street, which is not practical. So that, what that causes is we have to, the contractor has to go down into the well, seal it, create another line out of it, and then pump from there while they work on it, which is what you really don't, contractors really don't want to do it, if they can avoid it, but that is what the quote was for. Number two, this is an original well. We do not know what is at the bottom. This is the easiest way to state it. The base elbows are bad. We know they're bad. The ductile iron is all going to be switched out. And one of the considerations, we were going to reduce it down because it's a low flow station. Now on the corner of that intersection with all this new development, they're talking about putting in there, that station is going to go from a very low flow to pretty high flow. So reducing it down was not, no, we're not going to do that. The problem is that the bottom of that well has been sitting down there for so long and it's been overlooked for so long that we don't know the situation. He estimated probably another 2 foot on the bottom that they're going to have to add to the bottom of it because it's so eroded away. Problem 3 is that that station is connected to both force mains that run down Griffin Drive. In order for us to do any work onto that station, we have to isolate it off of those force mains. And those plug valves do not work. So, on that side, that's where we would start, which then we'd have to dig up those lines and do an inline connection on both sides. It's a very expensive process, but it can be done. In order to do that, we're gonna have to completely shut down our collection system, which is, I've had 2 meetings with Lee County now at the plant to try to start to, how we're gonna coordinate this. And it can get very messy and it's right on that wetland, so it has the potential to turn into something pretty nasty. So, first thing we have to do is isolate it, make sure that we can isolate it, do the work, and then hook it back up, because that's the problem. We can do all the work and fix the station, now we can't hook it back up because we can't isolate it from that force main. So it's a three-pronged problem. I've had 4 contractors out there, 2 of them will not touch it, just no. And I've gotten 2 feasible contracts on that one.
Can we get a pump truck, maybe a 10,000 gallon truck, get it over there, isolate the station, have everything there in place, back truck the whole 9 yards, draw that wet well down fast, fill it into the truck, then turn it back on once we've quickly inspected that bottom. Because what you're talking about is some type of a fillet to put in the bottom.
He was estimating about he said between 2 to 3 feet of grout that's gonna have to be placed on the bottom.
That creates all kinds of problems, because you've got detention times that are calculated based upon the depth of water and the diameter of the deal, and you're reducing that because there's pipes coming in that are fixed. That is a nightmare.
This one caught us off guard. We weren't expecting this many to be at this stage. Just to say, we're still, the contractors that are even capable of doing this kind of work are just now starting to get freed up for Irma because of what happened in Cavalier and Naples and Video Springs. They are hired to say there's only 3 contractors that are capable in our area of doing this, and they are under contract for the county.
We'd be better off to put the station on the south side of the road and be done with it.
Moving the main?
No, the mains don't have to be moved at all. All of the piping is on the south side of the road anyway. The main line, like he talks, if you see them when you go back out where the grass comes in, that manhole's the one that feeds over to that station. Just turn it and run it the other direction into the new pump station.
Can we
Be
use
done
that
with
to
it.
water the golf course?
I'm sorry.
Can we use that to water the golf course?
Not in front of my house.
Kenny, have you reached out to like the city or the county? Because I'm guessing that they've run into
Yes,
problems
and-
very similar to this.
Yes, I talked to the city of Cape Coral on theirs because their stations are in the middle of the road. And for them to do bypasses, they go under the road and they set up conduits and they have it all situated. I mean, that is possible. There again, it's getting the contractors that can do the work and how they, what they're capable of doing.
Your big one is make sure first, have somebody, Tetra Tech and run a calculation. If it is the possibility that that has a 2-foot fillet grout at the bottom, let them run a calculation, because you might come back to the deal where you can't even get DEP approval because you've eliminated all your detention time. Those are mandatory requirements. And if you can't meet that, that sucker's gone.
What kind of time?
You have to have a detention time in the pump so that the pumps just don't go off on, off on, off on. Typically, it's 5 minutes of peak rate of flow. Sometimes they even go 10 minutes of peak rate of flow. So if you have 200 gallon per minute capacity, 10 minutes, that means you're gonna have 2,000 gallons of storage in a 6-foot diameter wet well. That's 212 gallons per foot, which means you're gonna have 10-foot high of water. It's impossible, you can't meet it. So it might be that we find out that if we do have an assumption that we have to fill it 2 feet, they won't even approve it anyway. So you scrap it. The other one is you just build a wet well right next to the one that you got, brand new one, and then switch them over.
That would be ideally.
I know one contractor down here that does it, because they did it for me up in Indiana, that's a Naples contractor. But you're talking, it's expensive, very expensive.
Questions?
No.
Thank you, Kenny.
Good.
Oh, hey, Kenny, I'm sorry, I had questions about that. Kenny, I think it was a week ago, when we had the pretty severe rain come through, and we were getting some puddling, in some parts. I know on Gateway Boulevard, there was substantial water in the roadways. How are we going through, and are you looking at kind of the, like just having a health check on different things in preparation for, rainy season or whatever? I know you're paying a lot of attention to all this stuff, but I know that I had a couple phone calls asking about, the amount of rain that we got just in that one, couple hour span caused some flooding in the roadways, and were we aware of it? And I'm sure we're aware of it, and we're, doing all we can, but, what can we tell our residents as far as like, what's the state of where we're at right now, and what they saw, 2 weeks ago? How does that impact us as we get into potential storm season?
I probably would
It's a
take
storm
that.
sewer cleaning issue.
Yeah, well, storm sewer cleaning, and we also have a presentation coming up looking at some of the conveyances that will piggyback that on.
There was a spot on Gateway Boulevard, and I believe you told me about this, where there was a fair amount of flooding. It was right with the storm
There
drain.
was,
Seemed
yeah.
like it wasn't draining, but you had somebody clean that out. They cleaned construction debris out of it, if I'm not mistaken.
There's 2 spots we went.
Yeah, I thought it was unusual because we've gotten a lot of rain even before, and we did not have that issue. I didn't think we had substantially more rain during that time period, so a blockage or a cloggage does make sense.
We got over 3 inches in 4 hours last night.
Okay.
Can I touch on, I wanted to talk about irrigation. We're just starting to get into a preliminary looking at what we're doing with the irrigation on the scheduling. And one of the things we wanted to pilot was moving I'd like to get 3 master meter communities and move them off of our standard watering days and put them on the non-watering days. And pilot that and see what kind of results we can get. One of the biggest concerns that I have is if we have 140 people in one of these communities, or 120, Daniels Reserve, I think it's 198, all turn on their system at one time and start watering, what that's gonna cause, what's gonna happen. We're gonna flood out the streets, we're gonna fill up the manholes, the culverts, all of that. But we are looking at moving the master meter community and some of the commercial communities off of our regular watering days and applying for a variance. We'd like to start piloting that. So this is part of one of the things we want to try. That would make, what we're shooting for is to remove the high demand on the watering nights, the Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Saturday night, Sunday night watering, where we're getting to 7,500, 8,000 gallons a minute during the peak. If we could move a lot of the master meter communities off of that schedule and try to lower that curve and put them off on the other nights and see if that really would drop our demand. Say I'm hoping to get Magnolia Lakes, Cypress K, and Daniels Reserve and pilot them and see what we can do and how much that will make, how much of a difference that will make, what it's going to do with. It's going to take a while to actually see it, but if we could get those communities off of our peak times, that would really give us a lot more wiggle room than what we have.
Would you shut off the valve
We
all the
could,
times?
yes.
So
I
you
think for
have-
piloting, we would definitely want to
So,
do that.
so you would have a valve that would only allow water into that system on those select days?
Yep.
The only issue you got with that is people that have build-outs. That, you know, that landscaping that need the water.
That's why Prado, I say I kept Prado and Pistoia off of the list, because they're gonna be building.
We talked about this 4 years ago, that those master metered communities are a nightmare. And we're now seeing the problem with them.
See if we can get those on the non-watering nights and get that and reduce our demand and give us more wiggle room on when the residents, you know, their time to water is, they get full use of it. We can maintain our pressure. It's a lot more, a lot better for our pump, our maintenance, our wells, all across the board.
They're
This will be
still
one of the,
limited to two times by Lee County requirements.
or southwest. If it's anything stricter, you can go to it. They're the baseline.
But my point is that if we do this, they would have 2 days like we have,
Yes.
Tuesday, Thursday,
Yes.
Friday, Sunday. They get the same thing, only off days. All the other time, their meters are off.
We would, yeah, for piloting, yes.
If you're
We would
piloting.
definitely, yeah, we would definitely want to see. And then that way, with our metering system and our, we can tell exactly how much water is moving through there.
I don't see how you do it any other way.
Thank you. Chris?
I'll pick up just some brief things. We did order a replacement light pole for the concrete pole that got knocked down by Stony Brook. I was a little ahead of myself. I said the ivory stone crosswalk sign was
I asked you
reinstalled.
about that.
It'll be installed tomorrow morning. We had some hardware we ordered for it. And also the FPL fence on Griffin that you talked about. We reset all the poles and many of them in concrete. And we ordered a new line for one side, but they were short a spool that came in, so we'll finish the other side, but that's been addressed too.
Did we find anything more about the deflectors or reflectors or on Griffin? I tried to get hold of Chuck Bentley, and he was up north, and I couldn't get a hold of his son. But have we researched that and found any more ways to try to deflect that light?
Well, Bentley's actually gonna come out tomorrow and paint those shields on the inside black because they said they were getting more glare from those. However, on those fixtures that we have, there's nothing else we can do with that fixture. At that point, the shield's as big as it can be. It's not made for another shield. And the only thing we can do beyond that would be to replace the light fixture to one that's adjustable. That would only throw the light out toward the road, and that would be a $1,200 to $1,500.
What's amazing is that we replaced those lights with the same LED lights on the other 22 poles, all the way down the full length of Silver Lakes. And those houses are 3 times closer to the lights, and I don't know that we've had one complaint from Silver Lakes. And the light's right on top of them.
Well, maybe that's it, because it's right on top of them instead of coming in.
Coming in the glare,
Yeah.
might be.
Oh, trees.
But that's all we have for staff reports today.
Okay, I'm gonna ask for a 3-minute break. Call our meeting back to order. Do we need to go over the utility report, Chris?
No, that was just there for your
Just for
information.
information, okay. So I'll move it to, stormwater conveyance and maintenance work. 4A.
I'll ask Mr. Chris Hagan to step up. He's gonna make a brief presentation.
They've already loaded it in, Chris. There we go. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm glad to be back in front of you all. I'm here today to talk about a flowway inspection that we did. As you know, we were out here after Irma, did a couple of evaluations, looked at some things and talked about things, but didn't do anything too in-depth. Based on that and some of the flooding issues that you all had, we were asked to look at 3 specific flowways. Next slide, please. In particular, flowway 4, a portion of 3, and flowway 1. This is, basically 4 goes to 3, goes to 2, goes to 1. 1 is your big outfall for the whole project. Oh, you guys jumping ahead, cheating. The headwaters are at 4, the tailwater is at 1. What you do is you discharge into the big, or a 6-mile cypress slough there. So what we did is we took these down and we did them element by element or segment by segment, because they're relatively simple, straightforward segments that make up each of these flowways. Next slide. Flowway 4 comes out of Stony Brook and goes to a small blue sump. You see that's the circle, and that's where their outfall weir is. From there, there's a small section of rock riprap swale, goes to an open channel, then a pipe underneath the FP&L service road, another open channel swale over to Gateway Boulevard, piped under Gateway Boulevard, and one more open swale into the Hidden Links stormwater system. Next, please. This is the weir at Stony Brook. Now, recently you all had a bench bench run done to verify, and the elevations on that weir are consistent with the permit. The orifice underneath appears to be a little bit smaller, so there is some potential to widen that orifice. Only an inch, but every little bit counts. You can see that the problems with that weir are going to be ongoing maintenance. It doesn't have a baffle to prevent debris from piling up on it. It's got a fence sitting right on top of it, so that if there were large debris, it gets caught in the fence. Once again, it just slows down your flow. Next, please. The riprap channel is in pretty good shape. It's got some vegetation, but our bottom checks and our elevations through there didn't find a lot of silt, found there was a good fall. So that is not much of a problem in your system. Next. This, however, is a bit of a turn. And once you come out of that riprap section and you turn under FP&L, it's pretty crappy. The banks and the bottom need to be worked. Then you come up, next please, you come up on a pair of 30-inch pipes that are under the service road out there at FPL. Those are actually in pretty good shape. They don't look great, but there were very little silt in them. They don't really need too much maintenance. Next.
Now that picture looks like that there is a lot of silt. Is that just?
It's an illusion.
Okay.
We probed it and didn't find any real buildup of silt in them. It's the reflection, and well, that's the fun of using the drone sometimes, is you get these weird angles and looks from things.
Okay, it's probably a lot higher up than, okay.
Yeah. I zoomed in to try and show the pipes. We probably should have had a ground level shot. And in the package that I've given you, there is, one, you've got the 20-some page RIP report. You'll have this PowerPoint. You also will have all the photos we took during that inspection. So there's like 40, 50 photos. We'd be here all night if I went through those with you.
Yeah,
Chris, those two pipes are 30s, definitely measured 30,
Let me double check my notes.
because the notes on some of the drawings show them as 24s.
Our notes in the field, I believe, found them to be 30s.
Okay.
Yes, sir, 30 inches.
I think when they repaved that FPL road.
They changed it.
They changed them out, because they used
That
to
would-
be.
They
like
used to be
corrugated.
24s, yeah.
Oh, that would have been a much worse situation. Next slide. Again, it's more of the same FPL ditch. This one's not as bad as the other part on the other side. However, you can see there's a bush, probably wax myrtle growing in it, and that needs some maintenance and repair. Next, please. Then you've got the Gateway Boulevard crossing. We've checked with your staff and looked around. No one can find any maintenance that's been done on that pipe in the last 5 to 6 years, and we really recommend that be done, and be done soon, because that's a substantial, you're taking on at that same location, not only are you bypassing your flow, but you're taking on a lot of road flow there that's coming in through that inlet that's in the left picture. They've got a stormwater system there, and it's going to be important to get that cleaned out.
What kind of wires are those that we're looking at?
Those are the FP&L wires, because we were shooting that with our drone again. So it's way elevated.
About 6 years ago, we took a 4x4 piece of plywood out of that box, had to cut it. It was in there from the original construction.
Oh, boy. So there's no telling what else might still be in there, or what's been there in the
Well,
6 years?
Morris Riley report shows from the road to Pond 130, it's loaded with debris.
Then it's time. The next, this is the run that goes from Gateway out into the Hidden Links. Again, you can see it's, the further west you go, the worse the vegetation is on the bottom. The banks are a bit of a mess, and that whole thing should be cleaned up. And that's the end of flowway number 4. Go on to number 3. 3 is, you can see, is a large, now this is from your map, so it's not up to date 100%. But you can see that's large lake interconnects throughout. And most of those lakes have been constructed, but there are some gaps. And one in particular, next slide, show it, is there's a necking down of the lake. And it's only about 4.5, 5 feet deep there. It's about 20 feet wide. It's not a good situation. Our investigation out there found that the bottom's all rocky. So in essence, what happened is contractor got there, he hit a hard piece of rock, and he only dug as much as he had to make it look good. So you are looking at, you're going from a cross section in that lake that's hundreds of square feet down to something that's 20s or 10s or 50s. Maybe, I take that back, maybe thousands down to hundreds. And it's really a potential problem. The good news is you don't have homes on that area yet. So you can get in there with real good heavy equipment, and you can